Well, Mauricio, thank you so much for joining. Where are you zooming in from today?
So right now I am back in my home in Los Angeles, California, and my what I've converted to be my office, which used to be my library, and I love it. It's my new place of work.
I know we were just talking about how I feel like the office has become like merged with like a movie studio now. So we're all worrying about lighting and audio, and it's so interesting.
I
Um,
know.
anyway, I'm really curious just to start like with your background and how you founded the agency and kind of how your experience led to that and what that core insight was. Can you just walk people through that?
Yeah, Brendan, it was kind of an extraordinary story because I started off just selling. I used to be in the clothing business before I ever got into real estate, and I'm going back a long time now. I'm going back 20, 25 years plus or minus. You start forgetting after a lot of years, right? But basically, let's just go right into the real estate world. I got into sales. That's always what I liked. I liked sales. I liked architecture. I liked interior design, the art of the deal. That is my passion. And cutting a long story short, through many years of selling real estate, I always said to myself, my promise to myself in selling was to always have a better year than next year than the previous year. That was my goal,
I
right?
think that should be the
And
goal
I
in every industry, you know?
in every industry, right? And I fulfilled it. It became my goal back in the first recession, I guess, what was it, 2007, 2008? Well, the first recession, we have the Great Depression of 1933 of my life, of my real estate life. The Things changed, and there was a very, my grandfather always taught me, and we're all taught. Warren Buffett says the same thing. Buy low, sell high. When everybody's selling, you buy. When everybody's buying, you sell. Right? It's the contrarian ideal. And what happened was that when that recession hit, I was trying to figure out what it is that I wanted it to do. And I did not have enough cash. I did not have enough money to go buy multifamily apartments and condos and houses and all kinds of different things, which is what I wanted to do. But I didn't have that. I didn't have the ability to borrow. I didn't have the money. And so I thought to myself, well, what can I do that differentiates me from everybody else? And at that time, print ads, technology wasn't where we were today. Print ads were still very important. The newspaper was still very important. And everybody in the real estate industry stopped advertising, stopped pushing forward. They all pulled back. They said, let me, hold on to my cash and not move forward. And I took the opposite approach. And I basically, in essence, bought out the LA Times, right? So when you opened up the LA Times, there was 26 pages. I controlled 15 of them,
Wow.
right? So the perception became, oh, Mauricio's the only guy doing business, right? Everybody else is not doing business. Mauricio's doing business, right? So I grew that year from an ordinary agent, let's just call me 250 in the country or the state or whatever, and I became that year the number one agent in California and the number seven agent in the U.S.
And was
And
that like overnight kind of?
it, pretty much, I mean, it was
Wow.
a year, right? A year, it
Yeah.
was 15 months, 14 months, but in hindsight, 15 months is overnight.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that big push that changed my life, in terms of who I was in the industry and where I stood, et cetera, et cetera. But and the techniques that I used and the follow up and all of that stuff, I was kind of one of the first people to start using CRMs, right? The CRM didn't really exist. It was my own CRM.
It's funny because we always say like, so much of real estate, right, exists in like the technological dark ages. And then we're largely talking about commercial. When you start to look at residential, it's like prehistoric. It's like Iron Age, So
I still have books. I don't have them in this office. I wish I did, but I still have MLS books, and that's how we used to search for property And it was literally not that long ago. I mean, the fact that, we were all on the World Wide Web for many, many years. Every industry was on the internet, and, real estate, we were still searching for properties on books, right? Which was just ridiculous. But yeah, Brendan, that's the day that I decided that, and I looked at it and I said, my God, I'm number 7 in the country. Like, I only have 6 more spots to go to become number 1. And, that was obviously exciting and a push. But the reality was, well, what's the next step? Right? What can I do different? What can I, and I realized that a lot of what I was doing was teachable, was repeatable. What we can package it, right? And we can essence, what I call, people call it business in the box. I call it business in the cloud, right? And that was the nemesis and the birth of the agency, right? Which was to create a company that lived differently, that was a collaborative company, that was not agents competing against each other. When agents always call each other competitors, I call every agent a colleague, right? A collaborator. I need every agent to sell my inventory. I need to call them to find off-market listings, to find out what inventory they have in their pockets, so that I can so that I can service my clients the best. So that collaboration was the beginning of the nemesis of what the agency is, right? And to stop calling everybody competitors, but to really be, colleagues, and to be collaborative, and to love each other's success, and to celebrate each other's success. And that's kind of the culture of what the agency has now become.
And when you think about that, like that collaborative, like integrative culture, and almost like how antithetical it is to, what people think of as like traditional brokerage, which is, kind of a mercenary culture, right? You go from brokerage to brokerage, you're competing with the different agencies. I guess when you thought about building that, how much was technology an enabler of that culture? Meaning, like, it's one thing to have that culture, and it's another to have the actual instrumentation of how people collaborate. How did you think about building that?
So it's such a great question. And I know that that's what you're, concentrate on so much. And you guys have done an extraordinary job in your business in finding, prop tech and all of that stuff. One of the beauties of starting a new company is that you don't carry baggage, right? You don't have a Titanic
Right.
ship that you're trying to figure out how to move it, right? You can start in any direction you want. So one of the things that we did when we started the company is we decided 10 years ago that we were going to be a technology company, that we were going to be all driven by technology. And if you were not going to accept the technology, and look, from our perspective, the technology starts with a CRM. It develops into a gazillion other things. And now what we do is we use the different technologies that are out there. Some are great. We buy them, we incorporate them into our own technology, and some we built. We have our own software developers, we have our own stuff, we have all of that stuff. So we started buying out of the box CRMs, out of the box accounting, out of the box, and we realized that none of them worked well.
And none of
So
them were probably germane for residential brokerage. Like, to me, that's what's so interesting, is that there's this suite of enterprise software that's been developed for like every other industry. And this is back, in 2016 when we started Fifth Wall. You look
yeah.
around at the stuff that's built for real estate, and it was janky and analog and just like poorly designed. It was so interesting why this massive industry, the largest industry in the US, had almost sat on the sidelines of the technological progress that had collided with every other industry.
It's so true, and it's almost mind-boggling. You'll love this, is that my CTO, which not a lot of people in real estate had CTOs, right?
No.
My CTO and I, out of frustration, I was so frustrated. I'm like, why can't we get this thing, to work and to operate? And so my CTO one day comes into my office with a clever plan, and he says, come into the conference room. Our office was tiny. I mean, our conference room was tiny. We had plastic chairs. We had, I mean, it wasn't beautiful like it
Not
is today.
what I think of as the agency today, which is like this luxurious, like beautiful aesthetic.
Far from it. Far from it. We used to have our office sales meetings, and we were 30 agents, and we would, we couldn't even fit in the conference room. We'd be outside in the hallways, like trying to listen in.
Right.
But our entire conference room, we painted it with that, whiteboard paint, that
Mhm.
you can draw on. And so he calls me into the conference room, and the whole conference room is painted with his idea of a CRM system, right? And here's how it's going to go, and it's going to work. And he said, and I go, this is amazing, but how long is it going to take you to do this, and how much money is it going to cost me? I didn't have any money. We started the agency with our money. We didn't take debt. We didn't take investors. We didn't, it's a straight up, we did it.
Old
So
fashioned.
he, old fashioned. So he says, it's gonna, I'll have it ready within 8 months, and it's gonna cost us 250 grand.
Wow.
I'm like, done, let's go. Well, we're 10 years later, it's still not ready. We're probably $3.5 million deep into the fucking technology.
Right.
It will never be ready, right? Because it's always evolving and always changing and always getting better and all of that type of thing. But I do believe that today we have, and I know that, our competitor Compass is a technology firm, but I do believe we have the best technology out there. We've never
Right.
bought another company that comes with baggage and comes with all, people that are not on the system. And then how do you put them on the system? So anybody and everybody that works at the agency had to accept to operate on the CRM system, because
It's like your
otherwise
culture was like digitally native from its inception.
you can't work there. I mean,
Right.
you can't order an ad, you can't get paid, you can't put the property on the market. Like,
Right.
there is no other way to work at the agency than
Right.
to accept the digital nature.
I'm curious, like, how do you think about, technology can enable so many aspects of the residential real estate market. And I kind of think about it as like, there's on the internal side, on the brokerage side, there's collaboration tools and ways that agents leverage data and information and analytics and calculations and communications with their customers, like through a CRM. But then there's another side of it, which is the kind of customer delight side of it. Like in the end, you have customers. Everyone has customers, and the experience of buying a home has, at least historically, been one of the most arduous, painful, anachronistic processes, which is like just devoid of technology. So, how did you think about that side of the equation? Like, meaning like, we're meeting new customers all the time. We want them to have a delightful experience with the agency, work with us in buying their home, selling their home, buying their next home. How did you think about that side of it? How do you measure that?
So I think that's something we're still thinking about. And I think that that's probably one of the areas in the buying and selling experience that still has, a lot of opportunities in for improvement today. And you've nailed something that, obviously you and I talk about a lot. And but that experience is very interesting because there's multiple different types of properties, right? There's the planned urban development where every property is relatively similar and they're all brand new and they come with warranties and et cetera, et cetera. And that process can probably be changed and very, become taken to a very automated process, right? But then there's the, the luxury world or the Los Angeles world where, or, in Los Angeles being an example of a lot of cities where you have homes that were built in the 20s and the 30s and the 50s and the 70s, and they need to be inspected and they need to be remodeled and they need to have, so you can't, so the automation of that is, a little bit more complicated, right? Because it requires creativity. It requires an interior designer. It
Right.
requires love. It requires touch,
And it
architecture,
requires like human intuition, like, well, I'm sure we'll
It's
talk about iBuyers, but you're right. They work super well in these kind of standardized, homogenous track homes where it's,
yeah,
you roughly know the same, if you're buying 102, Maple Drive, and 103 Maple Drive is the same home built exactly the same way in the same vintage. It's roughly the same. But in LA, I mean, you can have a house that was designed by a world famous architect right next to a teardown, right?
yeah.
And that's, I guess one question is, do you think we'll ever get to the point where technology will be able to like truly inform either a buyer or an agent around the kind of eclectic real estate mix that like LA has?
I've thought about a lot about that, and I don't see that happening in my lifetime. I think maybe one day it'll happen, but by the same token, there's a fear of that actually happening, because you know, computer vision and all of these other amazing things that are occurring, you know, artificial intelligence, all of these amazing things that are occurring. But again, one of the beautiful things about residential real estate, which I find to be the most beautiful part, is that that's where you live,
Right.
right? That's our life. It's our lifestyle. That
Yeah.
you cannot replace life with a robot, with a computer,
Yeah.
right?
And
So to
there's
me,
an emotional charge. There's an intimacy to the decision that like no other transaction has.
correct. And the day we get to that, I fear that day. I actually hope we don't get to
I
that
feel like
day.
whatever
Okay.
that day comes, it'll be the singularity and we'll all be like working for the robots at that point.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of technology, as you can tell, but I do fear, philosophically speaking, in terms of life, I definitely fear that day. And again, we're talking about residential real estate. I mean, do I like to play pickleball? Do I want a virtual golf
Right.
simulator in my backyard? You know, do I like to face east or do I like to face west? Do I like the sun in the morning? Do I like the sun in the afternoon? I mean, do I, you know, a gazillion things that come. You know, I can tell you that one of the things that we do to change the way that you sell real estate is that we started, you know, kind of doing psychographic analysis, you know, to decide how and where we're going to sell real estate, how we're going to market real estate, how we're going to actually push digital real estate. To me, that's where the technology is super interesting, right? Can we understand the behavior of a human, understand what they like from real estate, analyze it from technology, analyze what they like, right? Through their LinkedIn, what kind of clubs are they at? What kind of boards do they serve on? What type of
You mean
philanthropy do they do?
like a priori consumer data about their behaviors outside of the real estate market, you then synthesize to inform, here's what we intuitively think they will like in real
Yep.
estate, aesthetically,
And
locationally, whatever.
yes, and then push the marketing and the advertising into their computer
Right.
that is directly related to that human being.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
so
to me,
interesting.
that to me is where it's all going. And that's what I'm exploring from an agency perspective, is how do we, you know, push that so that we can actually get into your computer, Brendan, when you're, you know, reading CNN, and push to you exactly what, you know, you're thinking you're going to want based on the behavior that you have and based on the behavior that you have on Google, right?
Yeah.
Are you a modern guy? Are you a modern farmhouse guy? Are you looking to move, you know, to the mountains? Are you looking to move to the ocean? What is it that you're looking to do just based on your behavior? And then I can start pushing to you what you're looking for through technology, make your life a lot easier. And now I can increase my sales, become a lot more efficient, become a lot more effective, show you virtual reality simulations of the property that you're about to buy.
Buying a home has historically been an incredibly painful process. It's a scary process for so many consumers because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to buy home insurance and get a mortgage and get title insurance and get everything notarized and a home warranty, and my broker's got to get paid. There's just, it's like all these ancillary transactions that happen around the main thing you want to do, which is I want that home.
Yeah.
So how do you think technology can improve that customer experience and kind of streamline it? And how does the agency think about like integrating those tools into the buying process?
Yeah, I think it's already happening, and we've seen it. You know, I think that the DocuSign is one of the greatest tools that has happened in terms of automating and making that experience a lot easier, where we can, as agents, can kind of package the entire file, if you will,
Right.
that kind of puts it all together. The usage of technology from the perspective of, you know, your agent is still a very important person, right? Because if you have a great agent, they can help you through using technology in the loan application, in the title, you know, going through all of that. So I think it's really about brokerage firms packaging the entire process and using technology to make it as easy as possible for the consumer. By the same token, we have to educate the consumer and we have to educate the agents, because one of the things that I can tell you that I'm seeing on the negative side of that,
Right.
okay, is that agents, new agents, are because of zip forms, right? The contract situation. They're no longer understanding and reading the contract, and they no longer understand what the contract really says. They really are just now starting to fill in the blanks.
Mhm.
Consumers are starting to do the same things, where you're just filling in the blank. You know, when you buy an app, right, on your book, on your phone, and you have to sign, and there's this, you know, you're scrolling through the contract, right, to get to I accept the terms.
Right.
Nobody knows what terms they just accepted, right? They just accepted the terms and turned on the app,
Yeah.
right? So the danger of what's happening with real estate is that literally consumers and agents are starting to just accept the terms, right? And that can be a little bit dangerous, because a consumer needs to understand what it is that they're buying. They cannot, you know, from a real estate agent's perspective, I believe we still have the ethical responsibility to make sure that we slow the process down and make sure that the buyer understand what it is that they're buying,
In
right?
a
And not,
really informed, clear-eyed way. They know what the
yes,
contracts they're entering actually stipulate.
yes. So I think that's our job. I think the job that you're talking about, which is the iBuyer, you know, or going towards there, automating the whole process. I think we're kind of there, but
Hmm.
I think the job of the real estate agent, from an ethical perspective, is to continue to train the consumer, just to make sure to slow down and understand what they're buying. I mean,
Yeah.
because the homes have a lot of issues. Like, you don't know if you're buying a house that the water heater is about to break, and you don't have the money to fix that water heater. It might work today, but it may not work 3 months from now. And
Right.
if you do the right inspection, and your agent tells you, hey, it's about to break, and you know, maybe let's ask the seller for a credit so that we can have it replaced. Because the last thing you want to do is not be able to afford that $2,000 water heater, you know, 2 months later, and you're scratching your head saying, why didn't my real estate agent tell me that that my water heater is not going to work?
And there's this like middle ground, right? Where on the one hand, technology is so empowering because it offers speed and offers transparency. But I agree with you. In some ways, it overshadows the the human overlay that you need to put on top of this really important transaction. And the way I kind of have thought about it is that I think there's naturally going to be this bifurcation of, for a lot of track homes that are standardized, that have standardized equipment, that have standardized materials, that have standardized values. Of course, you can largely leverage algorithms to predict value and, insurance costs. But for homes in Los Angeles, for the high end, there's a criticality to like what you think of a real estate agent is truly doing, which is like understanding their customer, building a high trust, dynamic, intimate relationship with their customer to truly understand them. And I think that you're almost seeing technology separate, right, into these two spheres of kind of like high volume and high intimacy. And it's just interesting because I don't think we've found that perfect tension in where technology is too much or too little.
No, and I can tell you that consumers that are using technology to buy luxury real estate homes, they're getting screwed. They're coming to, you know, people like you know, me or other agents, and they're agents who are, you know, discount brokers, because they're using technology really to buy the process, and they're just pushing paper, right? Just
Mhm.
literally pushing this paperwork around. Um, they're paying more for their homes than they should. Okay, they are not getting the credits that they should be getting after inspections, that their real estate agent should be asking for. The real estate agent is literally just pushing paper and just making sure the deal gets done, rather than really taking care of their
Customer.
client,
Yeah.
their customer. And that's the piece of art that I believe, and that's why I believe that the real estate agent will continue to exist for a long time, because eventually some of these stories are going to start getting out. You know, when a lawsuit occurs, when a consumer gets upset and they put it on Yelp. I do believe that the real estate agents need to use technology to improve and to make the process better, but as agents, our job is going to become different. It's not going to be about pushing paperwork. It's going to be about protecting our client and showing an expertise to make sure the client is protected through the process,
Right.
not just checking the box.
It's like, you know, the old axiom, right? Technology is a fantastic servant, but a terrible master. And I feel like
Right.
for a lot of agents, they have become kind of enslaved to, you know, using their own technology, right? And they're almost robotic in how they act. And I think the impression, obviously, of the agency's agents is just like there's an old school mentality that's paired with best in breed technology, and it's actually that combination that's what delivers value. I'm curious. I know you have such a interesting view on the MLS and pocket listings. Can you talk about just your experience and what you've done there as well?
Oh man, Brendan, that's yeah. It's not so much that I have such an interesting view. It's just that in high end real estate, pocket listings are an important part of life. Okay. And the reason I say high-end real estate is it really should be across the board, but in high-end real estate, pocket listings are an important part of life. If I have examples, a CEO of, and again, this is a fictitious example, okay? The CEO of McDonald's has taken a job as the CEO of Burger King, but yet has not yet let the world know that he is resigning from his job as the CEO of McDonald's, and he's moving to Burger King, and he needs to sell his house to move from Chicago to Nashville, right? They may want to start putting the house on the market on an off-market listing, but they may not want to have that property on the market on the MLS to where everybody starts wondering, why is it that this man is selling his house,
Right.
and is starting to look in Nashville? They want that privacy, right? A celebrity that is hounded by fans does not necessarily want people to know where their address is, right? From a security perspective, right? They don't want they are more open to having stalkers, more open to having security issues, and so therefore they want the ability to do things without the public knowing.
Meaning,
Right?
like the MLS is almost like inherently an invasion of privacy, right? It is a
It
billboard
is.
for a
It is
house.
100% an invasion of privacy,
Right.
right? And particularly when you become a public figure. And today, because of technology, a public figure, you can find out the address of a public figure through the MLS in 18 seconds, and 22 seconds later, it's on TMZ, and 36 seconds later, it's everywhere else in the world, right? And so there's a lot of reasons why people still want to operate in a world that is not out there. The National Association of Realtors has decided and passed a law that called the Clear Cooperation Law policy that's not allowed. So they've decided that that's not allowed. We had originally founded a company called the Pocket Listing Service, which was the PLS.com. That was basically a database of properties that were off-market properties that companies, that the people, agents, every real estate agent in the world had access to. If you had a real estate license, you had access to it, okay? And it was strictly for agents to be able to find off-market properties, these type of properties, so that they can sell them and show them to their clients. And again, we did not push those properties to
Zillow.
Zillow, for argument's sakes, right? They were just kept private. There was no history kept on them. If you wanted to test the market, and you wanted to test the market at $5 million, and you found out that that was too much, and then you went on to the MLS at $4 million.
It sounds like there's almost two layers to it. One is that there's this, that the decision to sell a home isn't as binary as any listing service would kind of purport in how it operates. Meaning, me as a homeowner, if I'm selling my home, I could be like, I need to sell the home tomorrow, or I'm interested in selling the home at this price, or I'm not sure if I want to sell it, and if I could get this price, I would. And it's almost like what you're saying is there's a spectrum, And today, the existing systems are almost too binary. It's either you're selling or you're not selling. And if you are selling, it's public and everyone knows. And if it's on market for a while and the price has to be adjusted, all that is then in the public domain. And the second is there's a real investment, right? That agents need to make in their inventory, in their customers, that takes time and money and relational value to develop. And you're kind of losing that, right? You're losing that intimacy. It's becoming, I almost think, like cheapened, honestly, when a prospective home buyer doesn't know that a particular listing agent has really worked with this property, maybe sold that owner their house originally. They've seen the home improvements they've done to it. There's a connectivity and a relationship to the property that's an investment of time and money and energy and honestly just intelligence around the asset that's lost when you just advertise everything.
You're 100% correct. And taking it a step further, a lot of times, when the client and the consumer, and again, I go back to the consumer, because at the end of the day, this is all about the consumer, right?
Yeah.
It's how do we service the consumer? How do we make sure that consumer gets the best possible service, does the best possible buys intelligently? A lot of time, the people, the agent that they're calling, and again, this is where the consumer gets hurt, actually has no idea of the neighborhood.
Right.
They're a neighborhood specialist on
Right.
digitally, but the reality is they've never sold a house in that neighborhood in their life. Okay, they have no idea if the east side of the street is better than the west side of the street. They have no idea if the values are the same. They cannot properly consult their client and give them proper consultation, which is why the client is picking up the phone to call them, right? So it's there's no choice, and it is definitely cheapening.
Yeah, and it seems like we're in this like moment in time where there's this tension between like all the technological progress that has occurred around the buying and selling of homes and a traditional model, which I think everyone agrees does need to evolve. And we're kind of exploring these tensions of where we've gone too far or where we haven't gone far enough. And to be honest, what's so interesting from my vantage point is we actually see the exact same thing happening in commercial, right? So everything we've talked about in some way, shape, or form correlates with a similar dynamic in commercial, around commercial leasing, commercial sales, commercial appraisals, commercial mortgages. And it's just interesting to explore like the similarities there. So
commercial, I do believe, can be more automated and become a lot easier and become a lot better. I think that technology, it's income producing. I mean, you're making an analysis, right? What's my cap rate? What's my opportunity? How do I reposition the asset? Can I change entitlements? Can I split off parcels? Can I add square footage? You know, I mean, it's all of the questions we all ask, right? How do I increase value? And that can definitely become much more automated, because the emotional value is it becomes a business. It's not your life. It's not where your kids are growing up. It's not where they're swinging on the swing set. It's not where you're sleeping with your wife or husband. Right? I mean, it's like it's a different world.
Well, it's always so interesting just getting your perspective on. I love, by the way, the story of how you built the agency. I didn't know the full history, so that was interesting. But also just your perspective on this, because it's such an evolving landscape, and I think you have such a unique vantage point to assess it. So always enjoy these conversations, Mauricio.
The same. Thank you so much. I love the conversation.
Awesome. Well, good talking to you, Mauricio.
Brandon, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for having me as part of your webinar, and looking forward to some more, man.
Yeah, me too. All right. Good talking to you.
Thank you.